Hello. So we're going to make a figure based on these reference drawings, and we're going to use polymodeling techniques to do it. Okay, so we need, from perspective, we need to go to orthographic. If you look up at the top right, you can see that I click left button and any key I press will also be reflected in that readout there. Okay, so we're going orthographic, which means when we look at the front, we are seeing no perspective. So the box that we create to work from, to build up the figure, is always viewed kind of directly in line. If you find the grid off-putting, you can hide it with G. So it toggles the grid. And you'll notice on my drawings, I've got gradations. So this is a character that's 8 heads tall, and certain parts of the body fit on these head gradations down the figure drawing. So second line down is nipples, fourth is kind of middle of the body, so groin, roughly the split between torso and legs. Sixth one down is knees, and then halfway down the thigh, halfway down the shin, not particularly notable and hard to kind of plot. This one, I guess, is like the, with the side point on the rib cage, but you're probably going to be dealing with clothing or supermuscularity in the normal way, so we won't see that particularly. Okay, so the thing to do is to start with a box. Now if you go create box, and I'm going to use keyboard entry so it arrives in the middle of the workspace, and we can use symmetry around the 0 line in world space as well. So these planes have been organised so they're sort of around that central spot. Just use the view cube and we'll have a look top down. So these are the top edges of the viewing planes. Put the grid back on and you can see where the centre spot is. So if I go now and add in my box, first of all you've got to set up segments, and the specific one I've chosen here is width segments is an even number, and that means I've got an edge loop going down the center line. So that's the kind of a key thing. These dimensions here are kind of roughly a average human torso dimensions in centimeters, and if I was being really canny, I would raise the offset the creation point so that it's in the 90 degrees kind of raised up from the baseline, but these don't conform to the XYZ down here, because you create a box by dragging its kind of base out and then lifting its height. Anyway, so we go create, and it arrives in the middle like that. And if you want to get a sort of view of it, there we go. Okay, now I've got roughly square polys, so there's kind of a similarity between the numbers for length, width and height and the number of segments I've chosen, to get that very kind of fact or effect, I guess. Okay, so next thing to do is on the box itself. I think let's just spin round, right click on the box and do convert to editable poly, because we've kind of finished with it in the form it currently is. Now with this amount of edges, and it's not very exactly kind of rich, it means we can really quickly and easily remove stuff that we don't need. So that's what we're doing next. So I go to polygon mode. I want to make sure I'm not backface culling, which means they're all included. Hit the delete key, and there we have an open box. And that means now I can edit the individual polys, and I can do so with symmetry on. So you might find, depending on which side you delete, it doesn't have to be the right side that you delete. You could work with the left side, with the right side if you want to, but you might need to do flip. Okay, and then W to raise, to move, sorry, and I'll move it about 90 degrees. There's a readout down here that tells you where you're moving it from and to. But it does need to be kind of pretty much 90, because I've got 180 centimetre square planes with square images on, so they're going to form the size of the character in the end. It's just a little bit too big, but it's in the right place now at least. Good, good, good. Okay, so I'm just going to scale it down. Okay, and now if I go to, let's say, polygon, it all disappears. Now, what's actually happening is I haven't got my end result on. So if you show end result, you have an orange wireframe to work with. If that's kind of off-putting to you, then you could always revert back to no end result and kind of work on one side, secure in the knowledge that the other side will be faithfully mirrored. Okay, so we're in polygon mode, and I'm in drag select, and I want to go to not drag select, I'm in marquee select, I want to go drag. So there we go. Oops. Now this is something I do frequently, which is not have pressed the Q key. So I'm going to undo that, hit the Q key now, and the Q key is just do selection, don't do any other business, like select, move, move, rotate and scale. So that's be some bit where you find maybe that you make a little mistake. Now there's an interesting thing. So I did some work, there we go, let's see, I wasn't backface culling, so I've got some stuff around the back of the object, so interesting. No, I don't want that. Okay, so just check, you have to do this orbit, Alt and click down on the scroll wheel. Okay, and so I will just be very careful and do hand picks, add those in, and tick that. So that's a neck, and that's really all I want to do for the neck for the moment. I went a little bit too thick there, just need a suspicion of it. Okay, now I'm going to do an approach to modelling the shoulders which will build in the right topology. Because the arms are in T-pose, it doesn't encourage you to automatically build in the edge loops that you need. One thing you can do, oops, make sure backface culling is on for the moment, is select the vertex in the middle of all the polys you want. Move over to the icon, it only works with these icons here, hold control down and it converts the selection into polygon. Okay, so I'm going to extrude out, it could be a bevel because I'm not on the centre line, there's no issues in relation to that there. Going to oversize that slightly and a double one. Okay, so what I'm going to do is bring these polys here onto the top of the arm and use these polys here to extrude the arm out, but it's going to go sideways, and at the moment it's pointing downwards. So if it was like, if your character had its arms down by its sides, then when they raise their arms, there would be sufficient edge loop structure to make a kind of curved shoulder for when they're down. So you need to kind of factor that into your modelling. Okay, that's might not look it, but that's kind of what I wanted. So we go scale these ones down, move up, rotate, and I'm using W, E and R for all that business because that's what they do essentially. Now I want to add in these two polys here, so Q to get rid of selection, control down to add them in, and push these over as well because we want them really back on. And you can start to see some crinkling there, and that's because the sort of every four-sided poly is made of two triangles, and they kind of join where they or distort the way they distort. Now okay, I'm just going to step back. There was a little extreme angle there. If I grow that, that can move over slightly, and then shrink it, push those a bit more. I don't want it too steep an angle there, if I can help it. And then I add in that one and its corresponding one there. That's better. Okay, so you can see now that it's all happening. It's looking kind of workable. Now what I want to do is grab these edges here, drag those up, and now it's looking a lot better. Okay, so now you can see how those, where the bottom of the arm looks a little bit more like the structure we want to create for the arm to go sideways out, as though it's a T-pose, which it is, of course. So polygon, and I think I'm going to use the old trick there. Select that one, it's in the middle of them. Hold control down to convert it to polygon, and then do a shortish bevel. We got there. Just taper that slightly, and because we're still in move mode, we can kind of mix in okay, that's good, and then drag this up, and then what I want to do is make these planar, so they're kind of flat to the plane on the x-axis. So go line X, and there we go. And as I kind of build out from here, I'll just move those out because there's danger of kind of real cramping going on there. Looks a lot better on the mirror side, but all the same, you need to look out for these sorts of things where you've got possible intersection or an edge, a poly folding over on itself. Okay, so yeah, let's get beveling. And here's where I really want the front view, so I can bevel down to the elbow joint, and I'll leave that as a fairly simple single edge loop for the moment. And then if I grow that, I can drag all those up and fit better with my my plan. Let's make those planar to the Z up. Yeah, Z. Those planar tools are really useful. Okay, so the reason why I'm making these everything go planar is because it's kind of easier to model with that. That's the way the kind of default axes are. What if I align these and make them kind of commonly planar? Will they average out to? Oh, kind of didn't work as well as I'd hoped or as badly as I feared. Okay, so this bit here, this is really kind of a single vertex, but there's probably one on the other side. There is. So if I hold control down, select these two together, and if I use scale now, I can bring both of them into line, as it were. Okay, I'll use 2 and go to edge mode, double click those, and unfortunately it's kind of gone a little bit too, what's the word? It's gone too far. Let's see if I can relax it. Now, the relax tool is quite useful. When you've got something like that where it's kind of way too blocky. I think I've overcooked it though, so expand it back out. I really just wanted to relax these two at the bottom, but it's probably a better idea to select them individually and use this scale tool to crimp them in somewhat. Now, at this point, you get that nasty feeling where it's too square blocky, and now we've got mesh crinkles running riot. So rather than spend time fiddling to trying to correct that, let's make a massive instant fix it kind of choice like that. So yep, still blocky, but as you roll it round, it just looks a lot more rounded, and it's all fakery, but it's all fakery anyway. Okay, so some correction needed at various points on that, but it's a lot better. So that edge and that edge, again control limiting, R for the scale tool, bring those in a bit. I just want to kind of move it towards being a more circular, but not do more than suggest it at this point. And I'm using double clicks to select whole loops of edges. Okay, so when you're beveling down the arm, one thing you want to avoid is having, where it gets to the wrist, where all these edge loops, there are 8 edge loops that are going to focus around in the wrist, and if you keep beveling, they're going to cross over each other if your taper's too steep. So there's going to be a kind of virtue in retaining, let's make sure my back face is on, in retaining that boxiness and bulkiness as well, keeping the parts away from the end somewhat. Okay, so another bevel down to the wrist. Now you can see the new ones being created are automatically hard-edged, which isn't favourite, but easy to fix. Okay, so we can see here that edge is getting quite small, bit more length on that, and it would taper to crossover, which wouldn't be a favourite. Okay, however, a wrist is kind of flat when the palms are pacing. Well, it's flatter on one side than the other. Just going to drag that loop down a bit, although really I just wanted these two like that. Okay, so that's kind of more like we want it, and a bit of morale booster, smooth it over. There we go. Okay, now special approach for legs. If we extrude the legs down from there, we're going to end up with this sharp kind of reverse over, which is a kind of nightmare to handle when trying to create the rounds for the legs in the curved cross section. So we need to separate the various leg sides, the two leg sides, from one another. For this purpose, it might be easier to not have symmetry on. So if I double click that one, we should just have, we've got 18. It's seen the border as something worth selecting, so control just to choose those two, and we want a chamfer, and just bear with me while I get the right settings, and there we go. Okay, now the eagle-eyed amongst you will spot that this is now no longer a quad. It's got 5 sides? Yeah, 5 sides. So we'll need to fix that up at some point. Might as well do it now. Okay, so you've got to have quads because when you're subdividing in your sculpting software, or doing just a general subdivide within your modelling software, you want it to happen kind of everywhere, or you want to control where it happens and where it doesn't happen. And if it's not quads, it won't subdivide. So that subdivision, you need to get the detail in that your model should reflect. Okay, so I'm going to vertex mode to do some cutting, and I do that because it shows me where there are vertices that I can hit as part of the operation. So I'm going up from here to that edge there, and then I cut from there to that vertex there, using right click to snap off each cut so they're not all trying to join up together. So now that's a quad, that's a quad, that's a quad. Brilliant. That's now not a quad, but we fix that up by just doing a swift loop round here, and of course around the back. I haven't fixed that up yet. And then back to cut, from there to there, snap that one off, and now it's quads apart from the corresponding one down here, which is now not a quad. Okay, but it's easily fixable. So anyway, that's your cutting strategy. Okay, so now we've got a bit we can do for the leg. So, oops, let's go vertex and Q to stop cutting, because I noticed I was left in cut mode there. Oops. Oh yeah, it's just that strange thing specifically for verts, and control to there, and now we can safely sort of bevel. I'm going to do this from the front view. because I want to not just bevel it, I want to get it to match up to the drawing as well. So bevel, take that down to the knee. It's actually set at a reasonable taper already, but now we want one that's zeroed and goes to the bottom of the knee, and at this point we can sort of move it into that stance somewhat, and then another one, and this one goes down to the top of the ankle. Taper it in. I'm watching out for potential self-intersections, and then one more to the floor, which that ain't, no taper, and there. Viva la tweak. Okay, that's fairly presentable. So something in by way of a tweak would be to cup hold of that and just move that one over, and then we can start to look at cross-section bits. But before I do, I want to foot out the foot. So polygon, that one, and that one. And this is an extrude because although it's not going to be, you know, totally straight sort of outcome, it is going to need to be fairly reshaped anyway, so bevel will just mean you have to do work on the sole as well, because that would be at the wrong angle. Like that. Drag it back. That's good enough. And then bring these over. Okay, and that'll be it for now. So just have a look at the end result. Go up to top level and properties smooth, and we're done. Okay, more to come next part.